which I revere and respect so much. I consider him one of the most respected king in the world.
Yep.
Would have to cover his mouth. So we have the ESA, the traditional prime minister, talks to you and tells you the mind of the king. That's a deeply cultural environment.
Sure. Okay.
Now, you don't have the environment. You don't have questioning that kind of environment. You don't have the subject questioning the king. Now back to politics. It's not the same here, and I think the principles of open governance are deeply rooted in first world countries like Canada, though with their own peculiar problems. Would you think that cultural nuances, indigenous culture, citizens' orientation, are one of the reasons why open governance would, quote unquote, not work in countries in Africa and developed countries?
So you're making an excellent point, because we do kind of project from Western liberalism.
Yes, I have the problem.
Open governance is a great idea, that those principles of transparency and participation and collaboration should be widely adopted, that they are the foundation for good governance. And I think we need to be sensitive to different cultural traditions and understandings in the way people make sense of their own governance system. So just back to the principles. So transparency, okay, the idea that people should know what's going on. And this is where we get into digital governance, because digital governance allows us to make it more easily shareable, that information that we have. So should you and I know how much the Minister of Environment spends on travel in a year? Should you and I know how much the government spends on hospitality? From a Western liberal perspective, yes, I think we should know that, and that makes for more open government.
Yes.
That the fact that we know what's going on, look, it's our money too, right? We're contributing that part of that money, so we should know what the government is doing with our money and on our behalf. So the transparency issue is the first one to think about. And if we bring that into a different context, for example, in the Nigerian context, in Benin, for example, should people know what's going on? The question becomes, to what extent is there elements that are not appropriate to share? Now, if they're spending public money, I would argue that that's appropriate, that should be shared with people. But if there are different parts of the workings, the machinery of government that are culturally embedded and aren't widely shared, I'm not right to say we should impose my particular view, which says that people should be involved in what's going on. I think in many cases, you'll get better government, regardless of the cultural setting. You'll get better government if people can contribute their ideas and contribute their thoughts about what's going on. So if you want to ask, how should transportation planning work in this particular city, I think you'll get a better sense from asking people what they think than you will by having experts